Hi, Paul Ryan from Ryan Tunes. I'd like to spend this session on miking instruments. I've gone through the microphones, but how do you use them? Where do you put them? There's a wealth of information on YouTube. How to mic a guitar, right down to how many centimeters or inches away it should be from which fret. And the same for other instruments. And a lot of them are great videos. Also, my own School of Hard Knocks here in the studio, doing trial and error on different instruments, different microphones. I've come to the conclusion that the only real, true, absolute way to mic a particular instrument is on that particular day, with that particular instrument, with those particular strings in that particular studio, and the way the wind blows. So I think there's, in spite of, there's guidelines, but there's also specificity once you get down to actually doing the job. I'm going to contradict a little bit what I just said. I took the Good Day Rising album, and what I did was I just sort of penciled out where I put different mics and different instruments, and sort of came to it's not hard research, but it's a general idea of what I was using. So what I'll do is I'll go through each of these instruments. Now there's some peripheral instruments like 12-string guitar, dojo, classical guitar. Won't cover those today. There's enough just with my main instruments. So here goes. Acoustic guitar. For a standard acoustic guitar, a 2-mic setup, I use a pencil mic, small diaphragm mic, and it's aimed at the neck, and probably fret 10 to 12 in there. The preamp might be the tube unit for warmth. At the lower bout, I'll put a large ribbon, probably the RCA 77, facing lower bout, but angled in towards my hand. The preamp there is usually clean, probably the Grace 101 or maybe the Great River. Moving on, the baritone guitar. For a baritone acoustic guitar and a 2-mic setup, I'm shooting to capture the instrument's natural lower frequencies. And I'll mic slightly different than the regular guitar. Specifically, I'm going to put a pencil, that small diaphragm, placed a little closer to the neck, a foot from the neck, and aimed at fret 7 to 9. The preamp's usually a tube unit with the midpoint settings for clarity. Then I have the large ribbon mic placed facing the lower bout and angled inwards past the sound hole. Positioning is further away here than for a regular guitar. That gives it that huge tone that a baritone can give you, especially when you use drop tuning. It's quite amazing. Dobro. Dobro has such a unique voice, from the sweet highs that it delivers to mysterious and earthy lows. So I'm trying to capture that. What I'll do is I'll use a large ribbon microphone hung directly above and facing the cone. The preamp's going to be clean, allowing for the unique voicing and range of that instrument. And then I've got the large diaphragm, preferably with multiple polar patterns. Might be placed 15 inches, give or take, and aimed right at the neck joint. The preamp's usually a tube unit with midpoint settings for clarity. And for that, I have a Neumann TLM 107. It's great because those different directional patterns, when you play around before you do the actual recording, it'll really zero in on the sound that you're trying to get that day for the dobro on that particular key. Banjo. Banjo waveforms are short, they decay fast, and sometimes if you don't do it right, they can sound harsh and even strident. So I want to maintain the instrument's clarity, but add some softness or warmth. So I'm looking for a combination of mics and preamps that are soft or warm, basically tube, and The odd time I'm going to use a compressor or a transient designer. Microphone wise, the KM184 is just a killer mic on the banjo. Place it about 2 feet away, point right at the neck pot joint, right in there. The preamp's usually a tube unit and warm setting, lots of tube. Large ribbon mic is placed facing the pot at about 2 feet away and above my hand, the picking hand. The goal of that mic is to capture the lower frequencies. I mentioned sometimes I might use a compressor or a transient designer with the banjo. Probably the attack, I might take that back just a little bit. I won't do too much, but just a little bit so it becomes a little bit clearer. Upright bass. The Neumann KM150 pencil mic, it's a small diaphragm which has a hypercardioid pattern. So what you have to do with a hypercardioid is bring that so close to the neck. Sometimes I've got it, my fretting hand, my left hand, is almost touching the microphone. It might be 2 inches away, but by doing that, it captures the higher frequencies and that earthy sound of fingers on the neck that only an upright bass can give you. Preamp wise, the tube. A large ribbon mic is placed facing the upper bout and angled inwards towards the F hole. And that one captures the naturally deep, rich, and low frequencies of the instrument. The preamp there is probably Neve style. I probably use the Phoenix, maybe the Great River. Mandolin. For a mandolin, let's say a 2 microphone setup. I'm going to use the pencil about 20 inches from the neck. Now that's debatable. Sometimes I might use a larger diaphragm. I'm going to play around with that a little bit. It depends on how I'm using the mandolin. Due to the mic's distance, whatever mic you use, precise fret targeting is a little bit tough. So my notes basically say towards the neck area. The preamp in that case is going to be a tube. And then facing the lower bout, it will be probably a large ribbon, maybe a large diaphragm. It'll be below the right hand. Now, my mandolin is a vintage Celtic one, 1922 Martin Celtic. Basically, it's an oval hole mandolin. So the sweet spot on those, it's strumming, it's right near the neck joint. So you're a little bit, you're above the O hole and the sound hole. So you want the microphone to be aimed below that. You don't want to pick up any hand noise or picking noise. So I'm gonna aim the mic down maybe a little bit away from the sound hole, but in the area of the lower bout. A clean preamp is going to allow me the warmth and accuracy that a big ribbon will capture with the high frequency sounds of a mandolin. And I mentioned at the start today, those are guidelines, even for me, even though I've used them before many times. I'm not trusting my notes. I'm going to go in the day before probably, I'm going to record. I'm going to go in and still take a look at positions, microphones, preamp combinations, and I'll probably come back to those a lot of the time, but the odd time might be 180 degrees different. It's hard to tell until you actually do it. So that's it for microphone positioning and instruments. Thanks for watching. See you next time.